Hello, my name is Ryder Searle, and I did my research on how exercise impacts students with ADHD. These are my results here that I'm showing, but I'm going to explain that a little bit later. I wanted to do it on this because I'm super passionate about movement and exercise and different movement oriented interventions to help our students succeed. And so I wanted to focus on students with ADHD because I'm coaching a student right now in tennis because I'm a tennis coach and I'm coaching him and he has ADHD. So I thought this would be a good research topic for me. And so, kind of the research that is done on this already, a lot of the research, they're pretty small studies, and a lot of them kind of seem to depend, depending on the individual. But for the most part, there is kind of a consensus of how, yes, there is a positive impact of exercise on people with ADHD, specifically with, different cognitive functions, especially on executive functions. A lot of the research that I saw was more on the general population, and yes, there is a good link between exercise and how it positively impacts people in their cognitive functions. And so I kind of wanted to learn more of how this impacts students with ADHD, more specifically in the areas of attention, focus, and their impulsive symptoms. And impulsive symptoms or their behavior, it could be like tapping their hands or feet or squirming in their seat, or just, having a hard time sitting still. So I wanted to see how exercise impacted that. So kind of the method that I went about to do this is that I asked the student that I'm coaching and his mom if they would be willing to participate. Got consent from them, and I went ahead and went along with this study. And so kind of how it worked is I had the student complete a Sudoku puzzle before playing tennis, and then we played 1 hour of tennis, and then I had the student complete a Sudoku puzzle after tennis. So I was already coaching this kid, 1 hour, like once a week or twice a week, depending on the week. So I was like, okay, I can just kind of implement the Sudoku puzzle before and after. And so that's what we did. And I wanted to compare the before and after results to see, if there was, if exercise kind of impacted them. And so, yeah, so he completed Sudoku puzzle. We played tennis for an hour, and then I had him do another Sudoku puzzle after. And all the while, I was kind of observing him and marking down how many times I had to tell him to stay on task, how many times he was tapping his hands or feet, how many times he was squirming in his seat, and the how long it took him to complete the puzzle. So here are my results right here. So as you can see, there is, I'd say, a pretty strong link between, the before and after results. So it does appear that exercise, did kind of improve some of his symptoms of tapping hands and feet, squirming in seat, and telling him to, having to tell him to stay on task. They were all lower after tennis compared to before. And on day one, so we did this for 6 different days, as you can see on the left column there. So on day one, he wasn't able to finish the puzzle because he didn't really know how to do Sudoku puzzles, so I'd had to kind of teach him. But on all the other days, he figured it out and it was able to do it. But I think it's pretty interesting that before tennis, his symptoms were higher than after, except for on day 3 here. His symptoms were a little bit higher in tapping hands and feet and squirming in seat, and his time was a little bit longer on day 3. But on all the other days, his symptoms were either the same or quite a bit lower, and then all of his times were lower after tennis, after exercise as well. So I think day 3 was a little bit of an outlier. It was kind of a harder day. And so, yeah, I think those are pretty significant results. And I think that this study does suggest that certain symptoms of ADHD, like not paying attention, tapping hands or feet, squirming in seat, were improved after exercise. And so, kind of one of my big questions going into this research was: does exercise impact attention, focus, and hyperactive behaviors in people with ADHD? And it does seem like it improved 5 out of the 6 days. So it does seem like the participant was impacted by exercise in a positive way 5 out of the 6 days, or 83.33%. of the time. And so I thought that was super interesting. Obviously, there was some limitations to the study. I only did it on one student, so I think that that's something to keep in mind is that this really only kind of applies to this one student. Um, and so I would need kind of a bigger population to really get the feel for how it impacts a lot of kids or a lot of students with ADHD. Obviously the time constraints. This was a pretty fast study, so I didn't have a ton of time to really dive deep into it and to get more people on board and to do it more often. But all in all, I thought the results were super interesting, and I was really happy with how the research went and how it came out. I learned so much just from conducting research and writing this paper, and just realizing like when we want to see if something works, it's so cool to be able to do research on it. And so I think this will kind of help me in my future teaching of being like, oh, like I should just kind of keep researching and see if like try something and see if it works. And obviously, we want our stuff to be research based. So doing my own research as well and seeing what other people are saying about the topic. And so I think I will apply a lot of this to my own teaching in that I want to be either a PE teacher or some kind of outdoor leadership teacher. And I think, physical exercise and those kinds of things can really help our students. And so I want to continue to keep applying this and seeing if exercise and that could be a potential intervention for not just students with ADHD but other people with different disorders or just the general population. And so I think that'll be super fun to kind of explore throughout my life, and I am super excited to keep on researching. Thank you so much for listening.